Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. We've got more people connecting here. If you can turn on your video, that'd be great. So today, we're excited to have our webinar together. We've got Adam Highfill with us. I'll introduce him a little bit more in a second, but before I do that, let's go ahead and introduce one another. So let's just go around the room, and you can take me off the spotlight for a second, Michelle. So I'm David. I pastor a church in Norway, and if we can just go around to know where you're from, and I'll start with let's start with KR. I'll just call out since.
Okay, I'm KR. I'm the pastor of the church in Phuket, Thailand, All Nations Church Phuket.
All right, Clefton.
Yeah, my name is Clifton Vaughn, and I pastor also in Thailand, in Bangkok at the International Church of Bangkok.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm Paul Grenier. I'm pastor of the International Baptist Church in Bremen, North Germany.
Jakob?
Jakob here with Steve. We're at Hanoi International Fellowship in Vietnam.
All right, Jimmy.
Jimmy Martin, living in Frankfurt, Germany. Lead our group of churches called International Baptist Convention.
All right, Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine, also in Frankfurt, Germany, working with Jimmy there in the next office, and also serving in Multi-Nation Church in Frankfurt, Germany.
All right, Judith Lynn.
I'm also with the International Baptist Convention working in Lorraine, and I'm responsible for discipleship at Converge International Fellowship in Darmstadt, Germany.
And Jeremy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Cook. I'm pastor of Lavington Vineyard Church in Nairobi, Kenya.
In Kenya.
Nairobi, Kenya.
In case anybody didn't hear that. Yep. Good to see you, Jeremy. It's been a while. Ipek.
Hi, this is Ipek from Istanbul. I'm not a pastor. Am I in the wrong place? This is a pastor's meeting.
No.
Yeah, I know. Just kidding. It's nice to have so many pastors around. I'm just myself. I'm from St. Paul Union Church, ex-Muslim, trying to be a good Christian now. So these lectures are very important and useful for me. Thank you very much.
Great. Glad you were with us, Ipek. And Andy, I see you through the fog.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I'm not sure what that is. So I'll try and sort out the fogginess. So, but good morning, everybody. Hi from the Netherlands.
All right. And Michelle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I am the administrative assistant of MICN. I go to All Nations Church Phuket with Pastor KR here in Phuket, Thailand.
All right. Thanks. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. More may come in while we're getting into it, but don't want to waste any time. So I'm really excited to have Adam Highfill. I know he hasn't introduced himself yet. That's because we're going to give him more time to do that in just a second. Adam is actually in Barcelona at International Church of Barcelona. And they've had a really neat experience where they had about 400 people. Now they've gone about 1,200 people. A lot of that, not all of that, but a lot of that's due to an eDiscipleship platform he developed. Adam is not a pastor. He's not even on staff at a church, but he has loved helping his church out. And he's also worked with other international churches. And he was actually going to come and speak at a leadership conference in Croatia that we were hosting with the IBC. And he wasn't able to make it. I mean, well, he was able to make it, but we weren't able to have it. Matter of fact, Adam, I think if I remember right, I emailed you that we were having to cancel the conference and you were in line to get on your plane, right? So we really appreciate that you've been able to make the time to come with us virtually, even though we couldn't be together in person. And I'm just going to turn it over to you. You can tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then he's going to get into the content. We'll have about an hour of teaching. There will be interaction, chance to ask questions. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A section. So here's the deal. If you have a question that's pointed to what he's sharing, go ahead and ask. If you have trouble asking, go ahead and throw something into the chat, and I'll help make sure that Adam sees it and we get it addressed. If you have a question that doesn't really relate directly, but you feel like Adam might have a helpful perspective, just make a note of it or throw it in the chat, and then we can go ahead and take that after the teaching's over. So if it relates to the teaching directly, go ahead and ask. If it's something you feel like should wait till later, we'll do it at the end. So we'll have interactive time now for an hour, and then time for Q&A at the end. So Adam, over to you.
Thank you so much, David. Great to see all of you. Glad you are all able to join us this evening. It's also good to see some familiar faces. Hey, Andy, good to see you again, man. Glad you got your fog issue. Looks like you got it figured out there. So, Jakob, I think we've crossed paths at FEIC events or somewhere in the past as well. So good to see you as well. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about how to engage your community and grow your church in this digital age. Also, this post-COVID era, this new era of church that we're all sort of being ushered into. I think it's also appropriate to sort of hit pause sometimes and thank God for leading us and helping us. And even celebrating all that he's done during these uncertain times that we've been in so many churches and so many different ministries. But also take a quick look around and say, what are we learning during this time that we really want to hang on to as we move into these next seasons? What are that's going to look different for everybody. It's going to be different in different contexts and different churches and different places, and we may stumble along the way. But we'll figure it out with the Lord's leading, obviously. And also, what have we learned? What wisdoms can we hold on to, and how are we going to be better as churches and as ministries? As David mentioned, I guess I'll share a little bit of my story before we jump in. I'm originally from the United States, from a place called Florida, and I made my way across to Barcelona studying a master's program. Pretty much immediately got involved at the local church here. I had no intention to stay in Barcelona, really had no intention of getting involved in a local ministry while I was here, and rapidly fell in love with the International Church of Barcelona here. I think by like the third week that I was here, I was already involved in serving in the church. Realized very quickly that I wanted to stay much longer than I had originally anticipated. I was supposed to be here for 3 months, doing a sort of an exchange portion of an international program that I was doing. And little more than 6 years later, I'm still here in Barcelona. I am married to a local girl from Barcelona, woman from Barcelona. And so we've been married for almost 2 years now, and we are based here in Barcelona, living here. As Andy mentioned, I'm not on staff at any church, but I've had the opportunity to work in a large capacity with the International Church in Barcelona, and also lots of other international churches, and that was sort of born in a way by accident. I was actually at a conference for Church Network, very similar to some of the church networks maybe you've been a part of, and we were sharing some of the things that were happening at our church in Barcelona, some amazing growth that had happened. We were seeing some awesome God do some amazing things, and some people were coming up to me at that event saying, "Hey, are you the one who's helping out with marketing and digital and website and things going on there in Barcelona?" I was like, "Yeah." And they said, "Can you help us do that? Can you help us do something similar?" And I was like, maybe, probably, sure. Like let's give it a try. And so that sort of led into over the last 4 years a really interesting adventure, helping international churches all over the world. Some international churches, some more local churches all over the world, and it's been very, very rich. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and we can sort of get the presentation going. But 1 second to get this worked out. Oops, that's not what I'm looking for. So yeah, that's enough about me. But I'm interested to know from you guys, what is sort of get some engagement going. We're a pretty small group, so we can we can discuss things over here. Tell me, what's something positive that is happening to you, during this interesting season of COVID? Something that's happened in your church, maybe just one quick line. What's something you're thankful for that's been going on here?
I can say at our church, we've had some new people join in on Bible studies because they were virtual and they couldn't make the drive in the past, but they could join in online. So that's been an interesting bonus.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. Someone else?
We found that more people have got involved in the services, and we've always tried to have lots of people involved, but despite camera fear, lots more people got involved, including former members of the church. So we've had someone from around the world every week in the service. So that's been cool.
That's awesome.
We've started doing online services, which I think will continue, into the future, even when we're able to meet physically, reach new people that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Someone else?
We're able to have missionaries around the world joining in with our weekly prayer meeting, which has been fantastic because we always pray for them, but actually have them with us in the room, it kind of thing is, virtually in the room is great. And we're not only praying for them, but they're praying for us live. It's really, really awesome.
Wow. One more. What's something positive that's been happening?
We've, I don't know. Well, before COVID hit, we had a number of people from a slum near our neighborhood of Lavington coming to the church. And one of our interns is actually from that community. And it's been great to see people giving towards a fund to help those most vulnerable, and especially within our church body in Nairobi. And it's really brought the church together in a powerful way.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, amazing stories of what's happening. What's really cool is how the church has been propelled forward during this time, where a lot of people are running and hiding or hunkering down. The church has been reaching out, and it's really interesting to see how that's been consistent throughout history, that in times of trouble and times of trial, the church runs too. And so very encouraged by that. It's interesting because used to, when I would sort of bring up this idea of eDiscipleship, I would have to thoroughly explain and qualify what I meant, and also the need for it, and talk about different things, and sort of almost compel pastors to get this up and running and the importance of it. And it's interesting that that's really no longer have to do that anymore. It's become very clear during this season. But even in normal life, people, even when things go back to normal, even before any of this happened, it's really important to engage people where they live. And the reality is that people live in front of screens. People spend on average 8 hours a day in front of a computer at work, 4 hours apart from that of screen time on their mobile device or in front of an iPad or whatever it is. And so whether you're in a European context or an Asian context or even an African context, in many ways, we're living in modern societies, all of us. And so it's very important to understand, that life doesn't stop on Sundays. That's sort of like it's a big concept. Life doesn't stop on Sundays. People are busy. There's always going to be things happening. There's always going to be distractions. And if we're not engaging them in the same channels that the rest of the world is engaging them in, then we're really going to be missing out on how to be able to connect with them and really grab their attention and help them grow spiritually, okay, and get our message across to them. So, a short definition here would be, that eDiscipleship is providing resources and facilitating opportunities for spiritual growth through online channels. Okay. And I'm 100% aware and completely agree with the fact that this doesn't replace traditional discipleship. This is a channel that comes along with and supports and expands, one-on-one discipleship, accountability, people meeting face-to-face. None of what I say today is to replace real life community, tangible face-to-face, person-to-person interactions. However, we do need to realize that, we're living in a different time. Okay. And so we're going to be trying to engage people through the most effective channels possible. Okay. And being really strategic about how we do that. I'm going to break this down into a couple different parts today. One is, what channels should we be focusing on? Okay. And for who are those channels? And then two, I think the question that's going to be coming to mind while I'm moving through these channels is, wow, how do I create all of this content? How do I consistently get quality content in front of people? And so I'm going to give you some tricks and some things I've learned along the way that can really help you create consistent content moving forward on a small budget and not with a lot of manpower, let's say, if that's your case. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the eDiscipleship engagement channels. You guys ready? Okay, let's do it. So here's a broad overview of some channels that I think are important. Okay, number one, website. 2 is social media. 3 is a church app. And 4 is online church. So let's call it that for now. And I'm going to walk through each channel, and we'll discuss some different things, some really important things about those channels and who we're trying to reach. Okay. So the first is our website. I think at this point, most people understand the importance of your website. The reality is it's the number one most important resource that you have, because it's the first place that people are going to actually find you online. When people hear about your church, just think about it yourself. When you hear about a new restaurant or a new store or a new product, what's the first thing that you do? You're going to go Google it, right? And you're going to come across some information about it. You're going to come across their website. And your website is the only resource that you have 100% control over. Okay, and 100% ownership over. You can control what it says, how it says, what it looks like, who can see it, etc. Which, regardless of how we may feel about other platforms, it's just not the case. Google can change their algorithm. Facebook can change the way they prioritize content. Instagram can block your account at any time if they choose to do so. And all of the audience that you've grown there, all the content that you have could be gone. But your website, you have 100% ownership and control over, and that's why it's really important. Okay, it is the number one easiest way to build relationships and attract new visitors at scale. Okay, it's the easiest way to build relationships and attract new visitors at scale. And a lot of people look at their website and they say, no one really comes to my website anyway. Why would I prioritize it? I got better things to do. No one can find my website. How are they even going to find it? They have to know the URL. They're going to see it on a piece of paper and type it in, or a business card or whatever. Google, it's like on the 4th page, whatever. Or it's actually, using our website to try to get new visitors. People aren't going to actually come just because they see our website. And it's honestly not true at all. We see all the time that new visitors, if I see a new visitor at church and I go up to them and I begin talking to them, I almost always ask them, I say, how did you find out about our church? And like 99% of the time, they're like, oh, I saw you guys online. I saw the website. I'm like, I'm just curious. How did you find the website? And they're like, oh, I just typed it into Google. They're like, oh, okay, cool. What'd you type in? And they tell me what they typed in, and it's sort of an interesting conversation. But so many of our new visitors come just because they found our website. Okay, here's just to kind of break those myths or those thought patterns that you can't get people to your website. Here's just a graphic of some website data traffic. I mean, you can get thousands of people to your church website every month who are engaging in your message, learning about what you're offering, your programs, service times, location, whatever it may be that they're coming to look for. And it's really important to have great content there that they're able to engage with. Here's an example from Barcelona. If you type in Church Barcelona, which you see at the top here, Church Barcelona, we actually pop up above the Sagrada Familia, which is crazy. If for some of you who aren't aware, the Sagrada Familia is like one of the most famous churches in the world. It's definitely in Europe. And if you type in Church Barcelona, we pop up in front of a Sagrada Familia. So it is possible to have a great website, to get traffic coming to your website, to rank well on Google, for people to realize that you exist using your website. How many of you guys, just raise your hand if you know who this guy is? Anybody recognize this guy? Yeah. So this guy walked into our church building about a year ago, and he had a little bit less makeup on, and he didn't look the same at all. But the little known fact is that this guy, his name's Ozzy Osbourne, if you were wondering. He's a sort of famous alternative music rock star of days gone by, and he actually still does tours and stuff. And he was in Barcelona not long ago, and he's actually he's a born again Christian now for several years, and he still performs around the world. But he sort of changed the way he was very controversial in his day, but he sort of changed the way that he does that and still performs and travels. Well, he found out about he was in town playing a show at Barcelona in Barcelona here, and found our church and came to church one Sunday. He came to church on Sunday morning and played a show on Sunday night in Barcelona. So really interesting, and evidence that all types of people can find out about you from your website. One more example, just from here in Barcelona, some of the stories that we've had. This guy, his name's Derek. He's a good friend of mine now, but just a few years ago, I didn't know him, and he didn't know our church. And he moved from a city close by in Spain, and he came to Barcelona with his family. He didn't know any churches in Barcelona, but he knew that he was going to get involved in a church. He just didn't know what that looked like. He couldn't find one that he just really felt like home for him. And Derek went to our website and engaged with our content, watched our services online for like 6 months, devoured every piece of content and social media posts and events, graphic, and everything that we had for 6 months before he finally worked up the courage to bring his wife and 3 kids to the church. And when they finally did come, he made that decision. He fell in love with the church, and now he's one of our most important volunteers. He's our lead sound tech. I'm also the worship leader at our church, so we work very closely together, and he's just an incredible volunteer. But if it had not been for our website and the content and the online platform and those channels, we may have never been able to reach someone like Derek. Isn't that amazing that in these days somebody can hear about us, engage with our content, be learning about us long before they ever step in the door of our church. Okay. And it's just the reality. And so just if you're interested about using a website, attracting new visitors from your website, engaging with them and through online channels and getting them actually in the door. I used to say butts in seats, but butts in seats isn't a reality right now. So let's say involved in the community, get them from your website to involved in your community. This is an interesting resource for you. You can download it for free. There's the link there, adamhighfill.com/visitors. Okay. The next channel is social. We all understand that social is very important, and this is a place where you can consistently remind people that you exist, okay, and engage them with your message on a daily basis. Okay, your website exists. People are going to go there when they're interested. your website isn't something that people are just going to stumble upon randomly. Most of the time when they're going to the website, they have intention to be there, right? However, social media is, they can engage with your content. It can pop up in front of them on a daily or weekly basis. Hey, we exist. Here's what we're about. Here's what's going on. And this is really important for, some new visitors who are going to find your platform. They're going to want to see more about the church, what's going on there, and also for people in the community as well to know, to know what's going on. Okay, and having a great online platform, it's good to have a website. It's good to have social media, but if we're not actually making people stick, when they engage with our online platform, then really people are just bouncing off, and we may never hear from them again. They're never going to engage with our content again. They're certainly never going to show up at the front door, or never engage in any online experience that we're offering. But I found that there's two really good ways to make your online platform sticky, and in this case, specifically on social media. I would say these things go for website and social media, but really important for making your platform sticky, as I call it, meaning people don't bounce off. When they see it, they stick. Is one, your message, okay, and two, your content. But let's talk about message for a second. This is really important. Okay, when you think about your identity, right? Beyond just your core values and your mission statement, what is your identity as a church or as a ministry? For example, a life-giving community of faith, a church that's focused on community and connecting with one another and building relationships. Maybe your ministry context looks different. Maybe you're a place of refreshing for refugees or for foreigners. Maybe you're a fun and meaningful environment where university students can connect. Something like that, and the list could go on and on, depending on what kind of context you're in, or what your ministry or your church focuses on specifically. Okay, and it's really important not to talk about ourselves too much, but to really communicate to our viewer and to the people who are engaging with our online channels how we can help them survive and thrive. People aren't interested in the fact that we have 1,200 people at our church, or 1,800 people at our church, or 13 people at our church, or that we've done awesome things, or we're the coolest people in town. They don't really care about that. They need to understand how we can help them survive and thrive. Okay. The next important thing for a sticky platform is content. Okay, we need to consistently give them a way to engage with that message that we're giving off. Okay, we're going to talk about content in a minute. As I mentioned before, there's probably one of the biggest caveats to this is actually being able to create content at scale. But we'll get there. Okay, so don't worry. But here's an example of content consumption. This is specifically media plays in the last looks like the last year and a half or so. A little bit less than a year and a half. We have 400 to, let's say 500 to 800 people per month engaging with content that we're putting out, media. This is specifically viewing our podcast. So it's really, and other videos and things that we put out on social media. So it's really important to have that content that people can engage in. Okay. Again, we're going to focus on this later, but here's sort of a preview of some of the types of content that you can create. I'm going to breeze through this now, and then focus on that a little bit later. I want to echo what David said. If you guys have any questions about something specifically related to what I'm talking about, please feel free to stop or chime in or put it in the chat, and David can make me aware, and we can stop and discuss anything. So speak up if you want. Lastly, about social media is sharing provides an amazing opportunity, because we get access to new networks. We get access to networks of networks, actually. And it provides opportunities for people to share content and spread the love of Christ. People who maybe would have been hesitant before to talk about, talk to their colleague or their neighbor, about Christ, or, share the gospel with them. Now they're able to share a Facebook post or share an Instagram story within their network and really spread that message to hundreds, if not thousands of people. Okay. Which is an amazing opportunity, obviously. Okay. Number 3 is our church app. Okay. And some of you may or may not have an app, and that's okay. Some of you may even think, oh man, that's like out of reach for us. That's never not even a possibility. I'll never have that. But I don't want you to discard this, because there's services that are available today that make this much more attainable, make it easier to create, cheaper to create than you probably would have thought. And really the results for having a church app, at least in the context that I've been involved with, have really been astounding. I believe that the results show that it's the single biggest driver for engagement within your church community. Okay, and this is speaking for specifically about people who are in your church, like your congregation, your people who are involved on a more consistent basis. This is probably going to be the main channel through which you're connecting to them. This and also social media. But the app is really cool because it gives them one place where they can find everything they need. And we can really challenge them. It's a place where we can push them to challenge them to take a next step. Okay, so here's some stats from Barcelona. These are the cumulative app impressions. This is basically the number of times that the app has been opened, which is incredible for a church of 1,000 people, maybe a little bit more, but still we have people on a daily and weekly basis who are going to our app to engage with content and the things that we have there. Okay, here's another depiction of that engagement and how it's increased over the last couple of years. This was basically 0 before we rolled this app out, and now it's as you see, like pretty crazy. Over 20,000, like 20-something thousand back in January. So a lot of people in our church community are going to find content and engage with our church app. And here's an example of this. A girl named Sammy, who's a friend of mine, and she's a faithful member of our church, and she works full time. She's got a lot going on. She has long days and a long commute to and from work on the train. And she recently told us, hey, I really don't get a lot of time to myself, but when I'm riding the train to and from work, I love to just be able to pop in some headphones and open the app and listen to the message on a Tuesday from a previous week, or from the sermon series that we're in. Read a study guide that we have there, and just sort of do her devotion or whatever it may be, and sort of reflect on how God wants me to put his truth into action, today and during this week. And so that's the heart and the perspective of why we can use and how we can use this app to engage with our church community. And people in our church, they need that connection point. Again, life doesn't stop on Sundays, and if we can put that in their pocket, then what an amazing way to reach them. So also, an app is a great way to drive people to that next step. And so we're always wanting to push people towards that next step. There's different ways in which people engage with your church, and we always want to be pushing them towards that next step for the stage that they're in. So if someone's new, then maybe we just want to get them to church. If someone is interested but not really engaged, we want to push them to content and get them connected with our sermon podcast and other resources that we have available. If there's those people who are eager sneezers, as I call them, these are the people who are they're at the church every time the doors are open. They're engaged in ministry. They're leading a community group. They're serving. That we need to be calling those people to give and to tithe and to disciple others in the community and things like that. But the biggest group of people in our church are the people who come on Sundays, but apart from that, they're just kind of disengaged. They're not really involved. And so, a really great thing we can do in the app is drive them to get involved. Okay. Explain why they can't do life alone. Let them know about events that are taking place, driving them to biblical community, whether it be community groups or outreaches, those sort of things. And then also to really serve. We need to make the opportunities to serve known, share other stories about people's lives have been changed because they've served in the church, and make the ask. We really have to be bold about getting those people out of their complacent state and getting them connected and plugged in. So, hey, we really have a need. I'd love for you to get involved. And the app is a great channel to which we can push people to sign up for events, to fill out forms, to serve in ministries, etc. Okay. And then lastly, to give. Okay. And I'm a big proponent of giving people an opportunity to what I call give where they live. And, mobile giving has increased dramatically over the last 3 or 4 years. Nonprofit giving specifically has increased by 50% just on mobile devices. Okay. PushPay, which is a major church payment processing platform, said that people who give on their mobile device give on average more than people who give on their desktop or even their laptop computer. So even of those people who are giving digitally, people who give on their mobile device give even more. Okay, so you can probably guess that if we can drive them to our app or to their mobile device to give, then that's going to be a really great solution for us. Okay, and then lastly here is online church. Okay, and at this point, this needs no explanation, or the importance of this needs no explanation, but we're increasing the reach beyond the 4 walls and creating new opportunities that didn't exist before. So many people, even just in the positive things that you mentioned about things that have been happening in this time, came because of opportunities outside the 4 walls of, that didn't exist before. And so the reality is that even in a post-COVID world, or in a world outside of this situation that we're living in now, showing up to church can be really scary. Okay. And again, I'm not opposing showing up to church and having butts in seats and engaging, with community and face to face. But if you really stop and think about some of the things that can keep people from coming to church, it's interesting. I believe that getting someone from the website to a church, they're like physically in person to the church location, is one of the highest commitment call to actions in any industry. Like, think about the mom who lives across town, and you invite her to church, and she probably needs to make that decision by a Thursday, right? Because she's got to be thinking okay, on Saturday, we got to do this, and we got to get to bed, because Sunday I got to wake up, even though Sunday's my only day that I get to sleep in, and maybe get the kids to sleep a little bit longer and have some time to rest in the morning, have a coffee in peace. I got to get the kids up. I got to iron their clothes. Wait, what are they even going to wear? What do I wear when I go to church? Anyways, okay, so I've decided what I'm going to wear. Now I got to figure out how to get there. Am I going to take the metro? Am I going to walk? Am I going to take a car? Is there parking? Okay, and then you show up and you have all those questions running through your brain before you even get to the door, and you say, wow, I'm about to walk in this place full of hundreds of people that I've never met before. Are they going to accept me? do I even belong here? So think about not even just the logistics, but even the internal and the identity questions that are involved in showing up to a church for the first time. It's a really high commitment. But if we can make a lower, yeah.
And of course, in the international context, we've had a number of people in our church that they've gone to churches in their home country, but this is their first time in an international setting. And there's this whole fear like, well, like we have somebody from Spain, but it's this question of, but it's in English. Can I handle it in English? Will I fit in that context? Or what will they be like? Because they've come from maybe a different denominational background or something. So I think even in the international church, there's even more barriers that make people kind of go, oh, maybe just when I go back and visit my mom in my home country, then I'll go to church again.
Yeah, 100%. Language is a big issue. What language do they speak there? They speak English. Oh, is my English good enough to understand? Am I really going to get it? Am I going to be able to communicate with anyone there? Here in Spain and a lot of countries in Europe, for example, you talk about the church and they automatically ask you about your priest and what time mass is. And I have to explain, John, he's actually not my priest. He's my pastor. He has a wife, he has kids, has a pretty normal life. He just, studied theology and the Bible and those sort of things. Or I say, hey, church, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. So it's like a Catholic church, right? I'm like, actually, no, it's quite different. We play music. It's a little bit louder. It's a little bit more people in the room usually. And then they come and they're like blown away and they walk in and there's like, snacks and coffee and people smiling and hugging one another. And they're like, this is not like any church I've ever seen. And so it's really helpful to paint the picture of what it actually looks like to be a part of your community on your website and your social and all your content. We'll get to that in a second. But understanding that it's a really big commitment, it's a really high commitment call to action to get people to show up to church. But now we have the ability to reach people with our church in their homes. Okay. And, even in my family and my wife's family here in Spain, for example, they would never come to church. We've asked them so many times, it's very difficult to get them to come. However, I've been sending links to friends and family, and we have people who are writing us every week saying, man, we watched the service. Just this past week, my wife's aunt who, she grew up sort of Protestant family, but hasn't served the Lord in the last 50 years. And wrote my wife this past week and said, wow, I watched the service this week. What a powerful message. The word of God is so powerful. I'm like, what? Like, where does that come from? But that's the ability that we have with online church to reach people. It can feel, and it's obviously going to look different, right? But there's still ways that we can drive engagement even when we can't see people face to face. Okay. There's thankfully there's platforms out there that allow us to broadcast our church in a way, that also gives us the ability to interact with them. And if we can interact with them and create conversation during those times, then that really drives a sense of community. We've been using a platform called Church Online. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that platform, but I think if you type in online.church into your browser, it'll pop up. It's a broadcasting service, and it's free and it's incredible. And there's a chat feature and there's some different features in there that really create like a sense of community. And so we've had people over the past months during this time saying, man, when I get on the chat, a few minutes before the service starts on Sundays, I'm talking with friends and interacting with people. It feels like we're in the lobby at church. It feels like I'm there, having a coffee, just like always. You can offer prayer to people sharing their needs. Hey, will you guys pray for me? I got this going on. You can encourage people who are making decisions. There's actually even a feature in the app where, in this platform, for example, where people can actually raise their hands and say, hey, I made a decision to follow Christ, or they can even press a button and request prayer. And so the chat and creating conversation there is a great opportunity to really encourage people who are there making that decision or who need prayer, for example. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning here is it's really follow-up in general is hard. Following up with those people who make decisions, creating those next step processes in your church to make sure people don't fall through the cracks after they come and after they make a decision. Online, it becomes even more complex because we have no one-on-one, no interpersonal connection with them. And so we really need to be thinking through, what kind of systems can we implement to get them from online church to those next steps, right? How do we follow up with them? So obviously, really practical ways are, if they raise their hand or request prayer, then we need to be praying with them, encouraging them. Say, hey, send an email. If you need anything, send an email to our church email. There's also ways inside of these platforms to link forms. So, hey, if you made that decision to follow Christ today, you can link a Google form or a type form in there that has some different questions. Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? You get some information from them. And that way you can begin a conversation with them one-on-one. Maybe try to get their phone number, their email. That way you can email them or WhatsApp them or even just give them a call and say, hey, we'd love for you to get involved with XYZ. There's also ideas and things that I've had around creating like Zoom breakout rooms for online church, to create community, and two, to almost serve as that like next step room at your church, or that next step table in the back of the room at your church if you have that. Hey, once this call is over, click on the Zoom link. You're going to be pulled into a Zoom lobby. There's going to be a bunch of people from church there, and we're actually going to break out into groups. If you accepted Christ for the first time, I'd love to get you in a small group with a couple people and just explain to you what that means, or even one-on-one in a Zoom call and explain what that means, what the next steps can be, etc. Also, next step classes, depending on the curriculum or the process that you have for walking through people, the foundations of faith, and getting them, from accepting Christ to, maturing in their Christian faith and getting involved in the church. Those classes right now can be taking place online. We for example, have a serve, we call it a serve track. And it's a series of classes where they learn about foundations of the faith. They learn about the core values of the church. Then we walk through the gifts of the Spirit with them and try to match them up accordingly with ministries in the church and really plug them in and get them involved. And right now that can happen all online. Instead of having those physical classes, you can have those classes via Zoom, etc. You can record those sessions and make them available to people. And then lastly, sharing. I realize, sorry guys, the text on this slide is not updated. It's from another slide, but sharing, as well as I mentioned, we were able to share. We've been able to share the link to church with families and friends just through WhatsApp, and it's people and on Instagram and Facebook, and people who would never take a Sunday to walk through a church door. I say never. It's never obviously impossible for God and how He can change their heart. But people who it's just very difficult to convince them to, take a Sunday to come. But now they're able to. What this does is obviously it lowers barriers, one, for location, and two, time. You don't have to take the time to travel somewhere. You don't have to leave the comfort of your home. You can be having breakfast and a coffee on a Sunday morning at your house. It's convenient, let's say. But anyways, okay, so that is a sort of overview of...
Adam, if we go a second, Christine, you've got a question in the chat that I think is relevant to what Adam's sharing. Can you just go ahead and say that verbally, what you're asking?
Yeah, I posted a couple of questions. Maybe you're referring to the latest one. So what are your experience on platform that may require signing up before the service as opposed to after? Thinking that after service people might be overwhelmed or indifferent to the content, so maybe prior to the service, as a form of maybe something that's while in the waiting room or something, they have a link that they can click on to sign up or enter the contact information. Do you think that's like a basically what's your experience with something like that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the platform. If I understand your question correctly, there might be some platforms who make you sign up in order to get on. I think those are probably maybe some of the older ones. The newer ones, you shouldn't have to sign up or anything. But I think what you're saying is, while we have their attention when they first sign on, can we drive them to certain things, let them know about things that are happening, or get them on our mailing list, etc. Is that sort of what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm thinking about 2 channels. So possibly as a requirement, I know that Zoom has a requirement where we can activate them to have a known form of contact before they can get into the room.
No, it may depend on how you have your Zoom lobby set up, but in general, the Zoom links, if you have your settings opened up, are available for anybody who has the link to be able to join. So maybe in your case, if you say, while people are coming on before the service starts, you can even already be saying, hey guys, after the service, we're going to be connecting. Here's the Zoom link. You can go ahead and save that link and have it ready for, for after, or something like that, I think is what you're saying. But in general, you shouldn't have problems with Zoom inviting people with a link.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that might be a deterrent from people coming on board, or it's more of a encouragement to actually compulsorily get their contacts.
So I think are you saying, Christine, that like having people have to register or even just put a contact kind of does that help with a commitment, Adam? That like, okay, I put something in and I'm serious about this, kind of like the idea that sometimes it's better to charge for a book than to give it away for free because there's a value in it? Or is it better to remove barriers and make it as easy as possible and not have that?
Yeah, I think in this case, that's a good question, Christine. Sorry for if we weren't understanding each other. But yeah, I would try to remove as much friction as possible. Especially in these kind of situations. Yes, we want to get their information. Yes, we want to be able to follow up with them because if we don't have their information, how are we going to follow up? Because we don't know who they are, right? So we really want to be able to get information from them, and we'll call them to action to, fill out that form or go follow us on Facebook or send us an email or whatever the form of connection that gives us their information is. But as far as just being involved in the service and being involved in the community, you want to make that as low friction as possible.
I think that's wonderful. That's a great idea. What I got from you is a great idea of informing them while we get their attention and before involving in the service itself. I think that's brilliant. If we can just say, hey, while you're waiting for the service to start, there's this link where you can sign up for a newsletter or something. That's great. We used to do that in church physically. We pass a tablet around, iPad around, and get everyone to sign up for newsletter before the service starts. So it's as part of the announcement. Now, of course, we don't really have a structure on how to do that.
Well, that's great, Christine. I'll just say, like, you can also put a link. A lot of the newsletters software, like Constant Contact, can have a sign-up link, and you can put that in the chat at the beginning. Our church is doing a soft start, so we start a few minutes before church starts to say, good morning, welcome, if you're just getting here, and just you can say things like, hey, in the chat, we're going to put a link if you want to sign up for our newsletter. Also, if you do things like if you develop an app, then you can have it where you tell them, hey, here's our app, and they download that, and then one of the first things could be like a form. There's a couple ideas. Adam, you may have others.
No, those are good ideas. Driving people to the channels, to different channels, using like a soft start, as David's talking about, to share events and things that are going on, even share stories, but also push people to your other channels. Yep.
Brilliant.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's go ahead and let's jump into the content section if there's no more questions here. I want to get to that quickly. And then I'd love to have some more extended time of Q&A at the end. Let's jump in here because I think this is really important. Okay, here we are. So it's easy to feel really overwhelmed about creating this consistent quality content for all these channels, right? You're like, especially right now, man, you gotta produce a service, you gotta record a service, or make sure the technology's there to stream it live. You're trying to have a more consistent face with your, as a pastor, a more consistent pastoral presence on social media, etc. And it can all feel a little bit overwhelming. But I want to show you a few easy and effective ways. Well, I'll say they're easier, but they're certainly effective ways to creating consistent content. Okay. The first is capturing success imagery. Okay. And so we've talked about message and the importance of that. It's really important to show success imagery that supports the message. Okay, show what it actually looks like for people to come to church, experience that community, experience that life change. Okay, and I think a lot of organizations and churches make the mistake of doing this like once a year when they hire out they'll hire a professional photographer to come in, and then they get those images, and those are like the images that they have, and they don't get any more images for the rest of the year. It's really important for us to get in the habit of doing this consistently. Okay, and at every event, every Sunday, every outreach, every community group, even if it's just with an iPhone or whatever camera that you have available to you, getting images that we can use. We really want to show, smiling. If our message is a life-giving community of faith, then we need to be showing smiling faces. We need to show people hugging one another, praying together, having conversations, laughing, right? And these images absolutely give your like online image a facelift. Okay. A pro tip for this is like, and you could do this weekend. Well, maybe not this weekend because we're not in church, but the next time that you have a gathering or an event, you can do this really easily. Take some images, even if it's just with your phone, and post them. Say it's on a Sunday, post them on a Sunday night or a Monday morning with a short quote from the message that Sunday, or a short quote from, or a short recap of what happened at the event. Hey, it was so amazing at our women's event yesterday, to connect with all these ladies and grow together. And then you have some pictures, some ladies who are there. And it drives a lot of engagement having multiple photos, actually. So the more photos that you post, the more engagement that you'll get. And so it's really good. People love it. They like it. They share it. They repost it. They save them to their phone and use them as wallpapers. It's a really great way to create content, actually have something to share, have something to post on Facebook, right, on Instagram, and really sort of communicate your message in a visual way. Next is telling stories. Okay, this can be.
Adam, can
go
I
ahead,
just
Paul.
Ask? Yeah. In Germany, we have a particular issue with the new European law of GDPR, which has really cramped with this, because we used to do a lot more on Facebook with that sort of stuff, and now it's really complicated. I just wonder how you get around that. You know what I mean? That you have to ask people permission, time that you put a picture on anything.
Yeah. So there's you run into some different issues there, especially with children. You have to be very careful, and also, as you just mentioned, with the GDPR stuff. And I don't want to give any specific legal advice, as I am not legally able to do that. But you can use a disclaimer, like on certain pieces of content that you have, whether it's a connection card or even an announcement from stage every now and then, or if you have like a screen in, I almost said an overhead projector. We're long past those days. If you have like a projection screen on your stage or behind your stage, like a lot of times before and after service, we'll have announcements rolling on that screen, and one of those can say, "Hey, just so you know, there's going to be cameras that may be capturing, people. If you do not want your images being shown, please let us know," etc. And so it's basically their way of opting out from their images being published. I would say that's for adults. And then for kids, it's more important that you actually have opt-in. So it's a different concept between opt-out and opt-in. With children, we're very careful. And if we're going to post something, we ask for permission from the parent before we post it. And also in a lot of our kids' material and some of our safety things and like that, we let them know that not often, but occasionally we may be taking pictures of their children, but we will not use them at all unless they are aware. Does that help? Awesome. Okay, great. So next is telling stories. Okay, and this is telling stories about what's happening in the church and in the community. Sort of like those stories that, even something as simple as those stories I shared about Derek and Sammy. It could be testimonials, people who've come to know Christ and their life has been changed in the community. It could also be what's been happening at your events. Hey, we had this awesome kids event, and there was 300 people there, and there was 36 new families that showed up from our community. It's such an amazing win. Sharing wins is so key. And you can really leverage these stories just around the events and things that you already have happening in your church. I would also encourage you to be specific. Talk about, if possible, use names, use specific stories. It's really easy to say, "Hey, we had a great time at our event," or a lot of great things have been happening in our city. But even if you share, even as the pastor, "Hey, this week I was at the coffee shop and I was able to have a conversation with my friend, and he mentioned." I'm trying to think of a certain situation or a certain example right now. Like I used to go to the coffee shop all the time, and there was. Here's a great example. There's a restaurant that some of us go to after church, like very frequently. And like on Sundays, their business is booming now because we love the restaurant. We tell everybody about it. And now we go there on Sunday and we can't even get a table. And they love us because we're sending them tons of business. And they're like, "Hey, all the church people that come in here, like they're so nice and they're so friendly and they're so kind. Like, what is it about? What is it about you people?" And you were able to have those conversations, which are so unique and so cool, and sharing those stories, and obviously in a respectful way of privacy and their concerns, but really telling those stories to encourage the community and to support your message. Hey, this isn't just something we talk about. This is actually happening in our community, right? So those are all ways that we types of content and different things that we can share. Right? Now here is this is the core piece, okay, of content, right? This is what I call the big church content advantage. And this is one thing that no Fortune 500 company or no big international organization, an advantage that they don't have that we have as the local church. And that's that every Sunday, just about yes, there's going to be somebody on stage speaking for 25 minutes to 45 minutes or an hour and a half, depending on how long-winded your pastor is. And the amount of words and content that you communicate in just a matter of like a half an hour, that's so many words, right? And it's so much content. And if we allow people to just hear that one time and it be, it comes out of your mouth and into their ears, in one ear and out the other, it could be, or just only heard once, then we're missing a huge opportunity. And if we're not repurposing our sermon content, I think we're wasting a lot of discipleship opportunities and leaving a lot of engagement opportunities on the table. Okay, so I want to share with you a couple practical ways that we can do that. Okay, the first is, and I think this is probably the best place to start for a church of any size, any budget, no matter how big or small or what kind of manpower you have, and that is just creating a weekly podcast. Okay, it can be audio, video, it can be audio and video, it can be in different languages, it can be, as simple or as elaborate as is appropriate for you. But you'd be shocked at how many people will go and find these and watch and listen to them if you intentionally drive them there. We have people all the time who say, hey, we love listening to the podcast, or hey, we checked out the church online and we weren't really sure if we're going to come, but then we started listening to the messages and we listened to the whole sermon series to the book of Mark. And it was just so powerful. I literally had a church call me from the US and say, hey, we watched your whole sermon series through the book of 2 Samuel, and we want to know if you have any resources available because we want to take our Sunday school class or our Bible study group through this same series. So it's really incredible how much engagement this actually gets. Okay, it's a really great place just from a content standpoint to repurpose. It's the easiest way, I think, to repurpose sermon content is because you just record it. Okay, you have to record it, either just a camera or audio. It can literally be as simple as just putting a thumb drive in your soundboard, or back in the day, there's times when you start up churches and things that I've worked with in the past where they just used like a little recorder, a Zoom recorder. I even had a pastor use an iPhone. I told him, like, when you're talking, just clip a little. You can buy like little lapel mics that clip into iPhones, and you record those. You record your voice into an iPhone voice memo, and a lot of times, that's plenty good enough quality to be able to start repurposing your content and having a podcast. Was somebody raising their hand? Oh, I thought I saw someone make a hand gesture at me. Okay. Another great thing, that was you, Jakob. Another great way to repurpose content is to actually get it in writing. You can transcribe your sermons, or even just take notes of the sermons and turn them into turn the sermon notes into like a discussion guide. And so every week we create a discussion guide based on the sermon. And in community groups, one of the first things that they do when they get into the community group is they go through the discussion guide together. They say, hey, this week on Sunday, we talked about this. What did you guys think? And, there we give them some points to discuss and why, and great conversation. And it's a great way for people to be able to ask questions and learn and grow together in those kind of environments in a really pointed way. Because a lot of times, community groups, if you don't give them direction, they can turn into a nightmare, depending on who you have leading them. Obviously, you want to have people who you trust leading community groups, but it's always great to give really pointed direction and almost like a curriculum. And this is a really good way to do that without a whole lot of effort. And we also post these online so people can see them. And we're actually able to, for example, that church that asked us for resources, and that's actually happened multiple times over the last couple of years. We've been able to equip them with an entire series worth of discussion guides and points that they can use in their Bible study and their community groups. So it's a really powerful way. Another thing is using imagery. Okay, we discussed this a little bit, but this is another way of repurposing your sermon content. You can take a short quote from like the main challenge of the message and put it on a simple graphic and post that. We also do this in multiple languages. So another really important piece of creating content is local language content. What content do you already have that you can translate into your local language? You may be an international church, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to keep you from reaching a completely different target audience. And this can be a really powerful way. You know, we've seen incredible growth with the amount of influence that we've had over locals in our community, not just the expats and the foreigners and the like. We've actually been able to create a lot of influence with Catalans and local Spanish people who we never had access to in the 25-year history of our church. But we made a strategic decision to create local language content, both on social media, every social media post in English and in Spanish, every graphic that we post in English and in Spanish, every piece of print material that we have in English and in Spanish. And it makes them feel like, you know, we're including them, we're making the effort to include them in our communication with the content that we're engaging with. Okay, so here is going back to this slide. This is sort of like, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's a good place. It's a good place to start with repurposing sermon content. Okay, as I mentioned, photos from Sunday with a challenge, quotes from the message. Discussion guide, short devotionals. We've even done it in the past where, you know, you take a sermon and you get it transcribed, and then you sort of take that and whittle it down into a shorter piece, you know, 300 words or 500 words, and use that as a devotion that you can send out midweek, or even turn that into blog posts. Hey, you had a 3-point sermon, you can make a 3 blog post series about the 3 points in that sermon, you know. And you don't have to do this for every sermon, but because obviously doing this every week would be completely overwhelming. But these are just ideas. A lot of times with content, the hardest thing is just knowing what to say. And you're like, hey, I know I need to publish something on social media. I know I need to get something out, but I don't really know what to say today or this week. And so these are really good ways to do things you can reference. And as far as media, you can use Facebook Live to give a short, encouraging challenge from the message. Hey, this past Sunday we talked about XYZ and our challenge was this. And I just wanted to remind you guys, hey, don't forget, I know it's Wednesday, but don't forget about what we talked about on Sunday about, you know, inviting somebody to church this next week, or really sharing your testimony with somebody at work, you know, whatever it may be. Okay. And yeah, so if you want to, I'll leave this up for another second if you want to take a screenshot of it. Also, let me know if you guys want these slides. I'm happy to send them over. That way you guys can have them and reference them. But, another thing is just specifically in this season that I wanted to hit on is content for this time, right? And there's some different things that we've thought through about what are the specific needs of people that we have right now. How can we help people with their needs, care for them in a unique way? Obviously, in the world where, you know, a lot of people have just lost their jobs, for example, we thought, hey, we're going to create some webinars, and just with some really practical topics. So we did a webinar on budgeting, like, hey, how can you handle your finances did some godly teaching about money and show people how to make a budget. Hey, there may be people who lost their job and looking for a new job. We always have people who are immigrants too. It's very possible that you have lots of immigrants in your country, immigrants who are at your church. They need to get papers. They're looking for a job. Hey, how can we make a resume? I'm going to help you make your resume. We're going to do a resume workshop. We did a marriage seminar. We did some different things. So think about the people in your church, what their potential needs could be, how you can really care for them in this season, and do some really practical things, teachings, workshops, trainings online. Also, a pastoral face, having a pastoral face right now is really important. So if you haven't recorded a video and published that on social media or communicated, hey guys, you know, we're coming out of this COVID season and we don't have everything figured out, but you know, we're going to work through it together, and we're going to let you know exactly when we're going to be back together. And until then, here's the things that we're going to be doing. It's really important for your community to understand those kinds of things. So I'm honestly interested to know what you guys have been doing, and what questions you have about specific content for the season, or creating content, or any of the things that we've talked about above as it relates to this COVID time right now, or relaunching your church after. So, David, maybe I can turn it back over to you, and we can do some Q&A.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we can just go back to no spotlighted video, Michelle. We'll just go gallery mode here. Thanks, Adam, for everything you've shared. I know there's been quite a bit of different thoughts going on for some of you. Adam, earlier there was some questions about the recording and the PowerPoint. I think you said a minute ago that you'll make the PowerPoint available. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that.
So we can do that afterwards. Also, somebody asked if you could make that discussion form available, the example you showed. So we can hopefully get a copy of that. I know you said they're online, but if we can get a copy just to send out. Jakob, you've got a question. Why don't you turn your mic on and ask?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Adam. Already implemented something that you gave an idea for on our homepage slider.
But what he's saying, Adam, is while you were talking, you gave him an idea and he implemented it. I mean, that's...
Oh, you've already done it? You've already done it?
That's how Jakob rolls.
Talking about. Dude, that's what I'm talking about. Action. Taking action.
Question though, from the subject of the seminar, I was suspecting you were talking about an online campus or online site. So I read this on multi-site books that some multi-site churches count their online engagement as a site or a congregation all by itself, and they have an online pastor, etc. So anyway, I still want to pick your brain because we're talking about that, and I think it's really relevant when you're considering keeping the people that you engaged online while trying to bring them to an in-person meeting. But especially in our international context, we have people still watching who move to another country and there is no international church, or move to another city in this country and there's not even a church in the same town, So, what are your thoughts about having the online site actually being a campus with its own pastor and that being considered a congregation, like as one of the sites of the multi-site church?
Yeah, sure. I think that's sort of been a trend that's happening lately. I've seen it more in the U.S. than anywhere, where some large churches, as you're saying, who have multi-sites, including in the way that they communicate about. I think honestly, there's two pieces to it. There's like the communication side, and maybe three: the communication side, obviously the practical side, and then also giving the online people somebody that they can emotionally and relationally connect with. So the way that you communicate about it is you start including them, when you're talking about your different campuses. Hey, we have people, downtown campus and in North Campus and in South Campus and all the people who are joining with us online today. I think that's important for your church to understand that, the church is outside of the walls. And, there's different ways that we want to create community to all feel like one church. And being really clear about how to communicate that helps that feeling. Another way is practically, when life goes back to normal or the new normal, obviously church is never going to be the same, but when things start to normalize a little bit, you still have to pastor your church. There's still going to be people who need your time. There's still going to be people you have to sit down and have coffees with, meetings that you have to have, etc. And so online church can be seen as like another sort of location, another separate thing that somebody really needs to take charge of. And it can't always necessarily, it could be your media team or your creative team, but giving some sort of giving someone a pastoral role over that can, one, logistically and organizationally help you better structure that. But it also gives the viewers, the people who are engaging week to week online, gives them a face. It gives them someone to connect with, to sort of build that relationship with, and build trust with in a way that they, may not if there's no one there sort of guiding them through the process. And so I've seen practically, I guess that sort of looks like the person who comes online, they're they're in front of the camera. They're saying, "Hey, welcome. We're so glad. I'm the online pastor, or the online campus pastor, or whatever. We're so glad to have you here today," and sort of does some of the welcoming and the facilitating, just like a campus pastor would do at your campuses. And I don't know how campuses work. They could have their own campus pastors with different messages, or campus pastors, and then they stream live the message from the main campus. So you could do that online as well. You could stream the main message from the main campus live online, but then you have the online pastor who's there sort of facilitating the conversation and the engagement before and after, and creating conversation in the chat, etc., handling the oversight of all of that, if that makes sense. I think that's going to be a critical role moving forward. I think every church who has an online, a significant online platform is going to have an online pastor. I think it's necessary. Depending on your stage, depending on how much you have going on and what stage you are at with your online platform. But I think eventually it's going to be a necessity, because there's going to be so many people engaging online in ways that were never before.
Yeah, and some may not want to go back to being on site.
You know what?
So
I'm the worship leader at our church, and Sundays are very long days. I've considered just making this a permanent thing. I enjoy having coffee in the morning and watching church.
We just had our first on-site service last Sunday, and we had half of the attendance. I think there is going to be attention of getting everybody back in the same room again.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, so question here, and this is, so I'm not sure everybody might have the same question, but we really invested everything in all our resources into online service to make it high quality and engaging. But then when we go back to just streaming a service, it's far less engaging and high quality, because you're not, it's not the same. So that's this tension. Do you want to just keep your online service, drop the quality so people are more drawn to going on site, or maintain the quality so you can continue to grow your online engagement?
Yeah. At the end of the day, we want to be doing things as best as possible in all formats, both in our in-person gatherings and our online. I can speak to this specifically because I've sort of been I've also sort of been wrestling with the quality that we have right now, because just what we're doing right now, personally, what we're doing at our church is post-producing our services. So we're pre-recording everything, the music, everything, and then post-producing it. We have really good quality music at our church, but like the quality that we have right now, because of the ability to post-produce everything, is just like killer. It's like so high quality. And so my concern is like sort of the vision and thinking for the future as far as like the worship and the music side. How do we transition back? It was like it went too far in the direction of being so good that now it's going to have to normalize a little bit. And I'm a little bit worried about what that's going to feel like, right? And so I think, yes, we need to make that try to make that transition as smooth as possible. The communication from the pastor and the leaders is going to help a lot with that. But honestly, the reality is that maybe some people, maybe there's a small, I think it'll be a small percentage, but I think there may be a small percentage of people who say, hey, I've actually really enjoyed this. I'm going to go to my community group during the week. I'm going to sleep in on Sundays, and I'm going to connect online. Should we encourage that as, community, especially in our international churches and churches where people are displaced? You're serving an international church, right, Jakob?
Right.
right? So you have a lot of displaced people in international churches. People find community really quick, build relationships really quick. And so that community piece is really important for connecting with people in the city, and important for the vibe and the engagement and even the growth of the church. However, at the end of the day, we can't make anybody do anything they don't want to. And so if you have a small percentage of people who don't come back, then, hey, we're so glad you're a part of our online community. Why don't you hit that share button and share it with your other people? Because again, now you have more outlets and resources and opportunities with the online church that you didn't have before. So while there may be some of those sort of things, I think the opportunity is greater than the loss, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you, Adam.
I'm just noticing the time. We've just got about 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions for Adam? Anything you feel like he hasn't addressed, or? Gosh, Adam, look at that. You've solved all their problems. And Paul, go.
Paul has a question.
Just a real quick one, Adam. Have you got any experience or insights on online evangelism? I mean, you already talked about, I suppose you have referred to it with the sharing and the media stuff. Any other ideas on that? Because we've got a lot of our young guys who really want to try that.
Online, explain to me a little bit more what you mean by online evangelism. Like, do you have a example?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, one of our young adults just recently put her own testimony on her Facebook. She just put a little film of herself on her Facebook account, just saying, "Hey, everybody! I just want you to know that 2 years ago I met Jesus. This is what he means to me." And she did a really nice job, actually, and I thought that was very inspiring. And it's because we have a lot of young adults, and they're really keen to keep sharing. They normally would do live campus ministries. We've got 4 groups going on at the moment, or normally, not now, but pre-lockdown. So they're itching to find ways to, how can they continue to share the gospel with their fellow students when they're locked down and they're all living in their own rooms? How can they do that? So they're looking at online ways. I think there are, like I say, this girl's already found one. There are others probably doing similar things, but I wondered if you had any particular experiences of that.
Yeah, I think this kind of honestly goes back to some of the content things we were talking about. Like, for example, this girl sharing her testimony. I think that's incredible, and I would encourage you to continue looking for opportunities and moments where you can help facilitate that. Even so, even for example, and this girl, I think she did it on her own accord, right? She kind of just recorded her testimony or shared it in text. There might be 3 or 4 more, people like her in your community that you could take and capture their story and use it as part of your online content. And then that gets shared. And in a way, those testimonials, those images, those stories really become sort of evangelism, in a simple way. Maybe even this girl's story, you can repurpose it. You guys can do a video of it or something, and use this momentum that's sort of been captured by her, and use it to take advantage of it and do more of it.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. I saw one other question about the app. You ended up addressing that, David, about the app and pricing and stuff like that. I personally use Subsplash as well. I recommend Subsplash, Jeremy. I love it, not only because of the app platform, but also their media hosting. For me, the media hosting is awesome, because I can have all my media hosted in one place, in a web player, and it's natively integrated in the app. So the experience from desktop to app is just super seamless and really, really awesome. So if you guys are interested in app ideas, check out Subsplash. I would highly recommend that.
And we've got a partnership with them, so we can actually get discounts with Subsplash. And then it's actually similar setup with Church Base. That's actually even more seamless between the app and the website with what they've got set up. Next week at the same time as today, we have Ignition. So if anybody wants to join us then, it's just a chance for leaders to get together and chat. We can chat about some of this again. We're talking about going back to church, all that sort of thing. So that'll be the same time next week. If you've got more, if you want to email, I put an email in the chat for Michelle. We can get you the PowerPoint slides. We can get you a link to the video once it's ready. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah, I think that's about it. We may have Adam. We hope to have him in person at some point. We might have him do another webinar in the evening in European time. Or if some of you, I think, would find that helpful for the people in your church, just let us know and we'll figure out how we can best serve you. So thanks, everybody. God bless, and we'll see you soon.